Have you ever wondered why the US has been quietly ramping up its military capabilities in key strategic regions across the globe, while keeping public rhetoric seemingly calm? While most of us are focused on daily headlines like elections, economic slowdowns, or cultural debates, there's a much larger, more dangerous game playing out in the background. One that involves the world's three largest military powers, the United States, Russia, and China. Make no mistake, we are in the early stages of a global power struggle, a contest that, if left unchecked, could escalate into open conflict. The US is preparing for a possible confrontation on two fronts, Russia to the east and China in the Pacific. In this video, we're diving into why this quiet preparation is happening, where the real flashpoints are, and what it all means for global stability. At the heart of this brewing conflict are the geopolitical objectives of Russia and China. Both nations are dissatisfied with the current world order, one that's largely defined and controlled by Western powers, led by the United States. Russia seeks to reassert dominance over its former Soviet sphere of influence. That's why we've seen the annexation of Crimea, the ongoing war in Ukraine, and Russia's continued interference in neighboring countries like Georgia and Moldova. From Moscow's perspective, NATO's expansion eastward threatens their survival, and this perceived insecurity drives them to challenge the West whenever they can. On the other side of the globe, China's ambitions are less focused on its borders and more on achieving global dominance. For decades, they've been building their economy, their military, and their influence with one primary goal in mind: to surpass the United States as the dominant global power. Central to this ambition is their militarization of the South China Sea and their eventual aim to reunify Taiwan with the mainland. The South China Sea is a critical trade artery, and China's gradual fortification of the region, with military bases, missile systems, and radar stations, has fundamentally altered the balance of power. For China, control of Taiwan isn't just a matter of nationalism, it's a stepping stone to becoming the undisputed hegemon in Asia. The United States, meanwhile, sees both Russia and China as existential threats to the global order it helped build and has maintained since World War II. The Pentagon's 2022 National Defense Strategy names both countries as America's primary strategic competitors. In response, the U.S. has been quietly ramping up its military presence in key regions. For instance, in Europe, the U.S. has bolstered NATO's eastern flank, placing advanced missile systems and rotating troops through Poland, Romania, and the Baltic states. These areas are at the front lines of what could be the next European conflict if Russia decides to push further westward. In the Pacific, the U.S. has increased its naval presence and expanded defense agreements with regional allies like Japan, South Korea, and Australia. The focus on the Indo-Pacific is no accident. China's military buildup is unprecedented. They now have the largest navy in the world in terms of sheer numbers, and they're constructing artificial islands outfitted with military infrastructure to project their power. The U.S. is positioning itself to counter China's ambitions by conducting joint military exercises, reinforcing alliances, and sending more warships into contested waters. These moves are part of a broader strategy to contain China's expansion in the Pacific. And this brings us to one of the most telling signs of American preparation: military spending. The U.S. defense budget for 2023 is over $800 billion, dwarfing the combined military expenditures of Russia and China. Much of this money isn't just going toward traditional military assets like aircraft and tanks. It's being invested in next-generation technologies, hypersonic missiles, artificial intelligence, cyber warfare capabilities, and space defense. These are the tools of modern warfare, and the U.S. believes they will be crucial in maintaining its military edge over Russia and China. The wars of the future will be fought across multiple domains: land, sea, air, cyberspace, and even outer space. The U.S. military is betting on technology to keep it ahead in this evolving battlefield, whether it's through drones capable of autonomous combat or satellites that can disrupt enemy communications. One of the often overlooked aspects of America's quiet preparations is the role of its global alliances. While the U.S. is certainly focusing on its own military capabilities, it's also deepening ties with key allies, particularly in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. NATO remains a cornerstone of America's strategy to contain Russia, but the U.S. is also actively working with countries like Japan, South Korea, and Australia to counter China's influence in the Pacific. These alliances serve multiple purposes. First, they ensure that any conflict involving Russia or China doesn't fall solely on U.S. shoulders. By strengthening these partnerships, the U.S. can create a unified front that multiplies its military strength. For example, joint military exercises between the U.S. and its allies simulate real-world scenarios, ensuring that forces can act quickly and cohesively when needed. Second, these alliances act as a deterrent. Russia and China both know that any aggression won't just be met by the U.S. alone, but by a network of powerful nations standing together. It's a message that says, we're not just prepared for war, we're prepared to win it with overwhelming force. But there's another layer to this strategy: economic interdependence. By fostering strong trade relationships with these allies, the U.S. ensures that its military preparations are supported by a stable economic foundation. In times of conflict, it's not just about having the biggest guns, but also about sustaining those operations over the long term. Allies who are economically tied to the U.S. are more likely to provide logistical, technological, and financial support when the time comes. There are several global flashpoints where tensions are running high, any of which could be the spark for a larger conflict. The most immediate is Ukraine. Russia's invasion has already embroiled the West in a proxy war, with the U.S. supplying billions in military aid to Kyiv. NATO, in turn, is reinforcing its eastern members in case the war spills beyond Ukraine's borders. The risk of direct confrontation between Russia and NATO grows as the conflict drags on, especially if Moscow decides to challenge NATO's Article 5, which declares that an attack on one member is an attack on all. In Asia, Taiwan is at the center of rising tensions. China has made clear that it views the island as part of its territory and has hinted at the use of force to bring it under control. The U.S. continues to sell advanced weapons to Taiwan, which could lead to a larger conflict if China decides to take military action. The South China Sea is another flashpoint, where China's militarization threatens global trade routes. The U.S. Navy regularly challenges China's claims by conducting freedom of navigation operations. And while there hasn't been an outright clash yet, the area is rife with tensions that could quickly spiral out of control. So why has the U.S. been so quiet about these preparations? Part of the reason is strategic. Openly talking about preparing for war with Russia or China could destabilize global markets, create public panic, and strain international relations. By keeping things under the radar, the U.S. can maintain a level of calm while quietly shoring up its defenses. But behind the scenes, the military is moving quickly. The quiet buildup of forces, the new defense pacts, and the massive investment in next-gen military technology are clear signs that America is getting ready for potential conflict. While the hope is that diplomacy will prevail, the reality is that the U.S. is preparing for the possibility that it won't. And with two rival powers rising, the stakes couldn't be higher. Ultimately, the global stage is shifting. Russia and China see the U.S. as an obstacle to their ambitions, and America, in turn, sees both countries as threats to the stability and security of the world order. This quiet arms race may not dominate the headlines, but it's shaping the future of international relations, and it's one we should all be paying attention to. The next decade could redefine the balance of power, not just through military might, but through technological innovation, strategic alliances, and the ability to adapt to a rapidly changing world. That's it for today. If you found this video insightful, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with others who want to understand the world beyond the headlines. Thanks for watching Profit Protection, and stay informed.